Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Hara, and this is the fourth in a series of 13 programs where we're going to be discussing planning for progress, using the town's business model as an example of how we can improve things. The first thing I'd like to do on each program is just quickly go over the bond issue so those people who have other things to do and aren't interested in the rest of the program can go ahead. But every week I will quickly go over this. There's not much to say this week, but for the agenda we'll go over the bond package status. We'll go over the progress to date on the show here. We'll talk a bit about management by objectives and some examples. Organizing for success. And then next week a bit about what we're going to be talking about next week. I'd like to put up the town charter just to remind everybody. Go ahead and take a picture of that, Christine. Yeah. The town charter, just to remind everybody that I have my daughter here today working the camera for the first time, and she's going to help me out. This is incorporated in 1771. I just put this up to show you the town charter, that we were incorporated and we are a business. Always have been a business since day one. Probably always will be a business. The 49.1 million bond package hasn't made much progress this week as far as we're concerned, because we haven't received, it's moving along kind of slowly, I mean probably fast behind the scenes, but slowly as far as we're concerned. No official facts are available to the public from town officials any more than were the last few weeks, so we didn't receive anything new this week. I didn't check this morning, but up until today, we hadn't had anything. Referendum will most likely be after the elections on November 6th. I think that's good because it gives us more time to prepare for our tax evaluations and, you know, our own business plans, and it gives us more time to do that. So understand these financial implications. Okay, the 209-200 budget status, the bond financial facts should be here in weeks, if not a month or two. I don't know, nobody seems to know when we will have those. The revaluation information should be here in early January. We're not sure exactly when. It might be a little early, might be a little later than that, but by then we'll have some idea about the revaluation. I just want to remind everybody, because there is still confusion about it, that the revaluation will have a new average assessment value for the average people in town when it's done. It'll also drop the mill rate. And those people that are above the average, way above the average, will probably see a tax increase of some sort. And those that are below the average might get a little decrease. But I'm not going to talk too much more about that because it's too complex for this kind of a program. If anybody wants to talk more about it in person, I'll be happy to do so. The 2008-09 budget will be ready somewhere up around June, July when they have the referendum. So when all these things are done, we'll know kind of what the pieces are for next year's budget, which I think is a very interesting year. Now, where do we stand? The last few weeks I've been putting up this slide, if you can focus on the slide. Number one, I said we would try to identify the problem, which we did, I think. I hope you can read that. Proposed required solutions. We did that last week, and then I said this week we would talk a bit about organizing for success. Now remember, this isn't a Harvard business course. Will cost a lot more than the free thing I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to get across the principles to common ordinary people who haven't gone to Harvard and want to know a bit more about the town and how the business is run. So, the first thing I want to say is that since we are a business, I showed you the charter, I want to remind you that we probably should run like a business. I did try a new font this year, this week on the slides. It looks like it's going to be much easier to read for you. I've been playing with the computer trying to get better slides for you because not everybody can always understand my Connecticut accent. First thing I want to talk about as far as running as a business, I think is very important, is a technique called management by objectives. It's very important that any business CEO, chief executive officer, and his board of directors set a very high level of objectives each year for for that year and many years to come for the business to follow. That's how businessmen operate. It's not in focus, I don't think, dear, but I can't tell from here. Yeah. It's okay? All right, thanks. Set high-level objectives each year for many years to come for the business to follow. Reviewing progress each quarter, or more frequently, they're called quarterly reviews in business, if necessary. So when you're kind of in trouble, you might want to review every month. When I was working in the NASA programs, in the space programs for various vendors, we would have a review 3-4 times a day, every day, 7 days a week, especially during launches. So when things are critical, you have more reviews, and then you make more decisions to keep things on from going off the critical path and getting into trouble. The next thing is, when you run by objectives, you have to really delegate authority, once the objectives are there, to the management team, enabling them to create lower level objectives. And I'll explain a bit about that tonight. And a related plan each year in an attempt to achieve the high level objectives. They have to let the people get on with the job, as I mentioned last week, 95% of the time. That's called the 95% rule in business. And it means that 95% of the time they should have enough information and enough direction and enough power delegated to them to get on with the job and get things going. The other 5% is managed by exception. That's when they can't go and they need help, and then they have to go to management for help. And that's called management by exception. And that is not a bad sign. It's good when people come and ask for help, providing, you know, they do it within the flavor of the plan. The next thing I want to point out is that there are two such kind of objectives. There are many more after you get going on the plan, but the first thing you want to do is establish a high-level objectives. And when I try to find the high-level objectives for Winston, and I've asked several people in the town hall, I don't think there are any that I can at least find. If there are some, somebody please tell me, because I would love to see them. So the first thing we want to do, and the CEO and the managing board, the board of directors, which is the selectmen, need to establish high-level objectives. They only need to be 5 or 6 of them. I've seen guys run big companies like IBM come to the annual meeting, or come to the meeting with 125 vice presidents and list 5 objectives for the year, and maybe another 5 for the next 5 years. That's called the 5-year planning when you do that. So establish high-level objectives, and then establish lower-level objectives that fit within the high-level objectives. As you drop down the organization, the objectives become more towards what the people at that level have to achieve and do to get the job done. Then once you get these objectives agreed by the management team and you publish them and everybody knows what they are, they can't be done in secret. It's all got to be out in the open so everybody knows exactly what they have to do. If they don't know what they have to do, and I'm going to talk more about that later, then they can't do it. So we want next to produce a plan of some sort, which is basically, again, by objectives. It's time frames and what are you going to try to achieve in a time frame. You might not always know how you're going to do it, but you have to set some objectives down and then work towards resolving all the problems that pop up in management by exception. And you always got to be lookout, like I said about walking around the lake last week, always be looking out for the exceptions. and then deal with them in a rapid manner. And when we talk about speeding things up, and in a couple shows from now, I'm going to talk a lot about how to speed up a very sluggish, bureaucratic organization. Not necessarily our organization, but other sluggish bureaucratic organizations. Mainly when I get involved in things around the world, they are in need of help. Otherwise, they don't need me. They don't need a troubleshooter. So, or they need new management, or in a fast growth, they need new management. We need to publish these things widely. You need to make a simple plan and a high priority, not a big, thick plan like this. A very simple plan. Now, we do have the equivalent of that with the bond package, in that we have a very small summary of it, and that's good. That's something that saves people from having to read the whole plan. And the summary, which most people will read, is very, very good, and it should be able to tell you exactly what you have to do. Now, I've seen summaries for big companies that are 2 or 3 pages. Don't have to be a lot of pages. The more succinct they are, the more precise they are, the more people will read them. It's not surprising that people won't read a big, heavy, thick package because, you know, for all kinds of reasons. You know, they don't have the time for one thing, and maybe don't even have the experience for another. It covers a pretty wide range. So normally, a whole team has to look at these packages, and I think that's what's happening in Winston now with the bond package. You have to give the simple plan a high priority. High priority, the highest priority in the town will be to meet the 5 or 6 objectives that are set by the CEO and the board of directors, and then you have to review the progress frequently. Now, I'm going to now give you a three examples of what I consider to be the lower things, because I think I got out of place the higher one. Either that or I didn't put it in here. Anyway, let's talk about the higher without the slide. The higher level objectives are pretty simple, and I'm just going to give you the ones that the Republicans are talking about for now, if I can remember them. I had it on a slide and I misplaced it. But number 1, revenue. That's their top priority. If they get elected, and I think it should be everybody's top priority, as I said last week, to get revenue into this town by one manner or another, and we'll talk a bit about that tonight. Number 2 priority is budget. And while we're in this tight pinch right now of breaking even every year and not being able to afford maintenance and things like that, we need to look hard at the budget and make sure that it's all absolutely well spent, and that the priorities for spending this money are right. And I think when we get done with a few of these shows, you'll begin to question these priorities, because I think, first of all, that we need a real high priority on revenue. So if we don't have the highest of priorities on revenue right now, that's, you know, that isn't going to help us as a company. So I think that's very important. The next priority they have is charter change. They want to look at the charter and make it so the charter allows us to do the kind of things that we want to do to run like a business. And then the final one they have 5. The final high-level one they have is to look at the infrastructure in the town and see, I guess the biggest example of that, and I think they covered it in the bond package, although I'm not positive of it, is to get the school buildings under the control of the town so that they can spend the money and maintain them from year to year and be in charge of that, and that the educators can then concentrate on the education and not have to worry about the maintenance issues and the development issues of the buildings and all that kind of thing. So now they could have more objectives. They could have 6 or 7. The more you get, the more unwieldy and the harder it is to understand. But that's very much how that stands. So now we're going to talk about the next level down, which is I'm going to talk about a little more. The 5 are pretty easy to understand, and if I find the slide, I'll pop it up for a minute. But we're going to talk about 3 things. Now, I have this week prepared 3 sort of high-level business plans for the town, and one of them is to maintain our existing growth about inflation. Inflation is about 3.5%, including food and fuel and things, pretty on average over the 10 years. I might say here, and it's been pointed out to me by various people, that one of the reasons it is high like that is because we had the revaluation, and the revaluation put the value of the property way up and the interest rate down, and that helps. So normally we have the growth of about, I forget, 1.9%. I've got another page. I'm sorry, 0.97% on an average over 10 years. But because it's brought down by the revaluation year we had every 10 years. In the future, the revaluation year will be every 5 years. Starting this year, it'll be every 5 years. There's new rules in town, in the state rather. And as far as, and I'm not an expert on those things. All I know is we're having a reval this year, and we might have one again in 5 years, and it's kind of what the plan is. So that does affect things. So when I did the spreadsheets, which I'll have available next week and may discuss here next week, I did break. I took the 26% with that we went up last time, and I split it in half, and I put half of it in for the beginning of next year, because that's when the reval will take place, will hit the books rather, and then half for 5 years later than that. So instead of having one every 10 years, we'll have one every 5 years, and that'll help us a little because it'll spread out some of this and be a little easier to keep track of. So we're going to talk about the 3.52%. We're going to talk about trying to get it up to 6%, as I mentioned last week, with some objectives for doing that, and I did a little spreadsheet and a plan for that, and it's all based on assumptions, and I will spell out what the assumptions are next week when I go over the spreadsheets. And then the last one, but not least, and you're going to see next week when I show you the spreadsheets why we need it, is the quantum leap that I've been talking about. Right now, we keep, over the last 10 years, as I've been mentioning, we keep breaking even, and we borrow minimally. We kind of borrow minimally. And we need to keep doing that for a few years. I would say the spreadsheets look like, if the assumptions are right, and they'll always change the assumptions. They have to be looked at all the time with management by exception. But as soon as some new thing, like when the reval gets done, then we'll know better and we can change the spreadsheets. And then when the budget comes in next year, we'll know better, we'll change the spreadsheets again. It's a constant battle between setting objectives, writing them down, setting plans for the objectives, and then managing by exception, watching it like a hawk and changing it as soon as something comes along that requires our attention. So that's what we've been doing, and I can tell you, after looking especially at the bond package, but in general in your own household, you know, once I was about 40 in California, and I was taking a new job in New York City. I think it was a New York City job. I lose track of these things. And I went to the bank and I said, I'd like to have a line of credit so that my wife can come down and borrow some money should I be in Europe or something and not be able to handle it quickly. And the lady took a look at my papers and said, Brian, you don't have any debt. Your family has no debt. And I said, well, you know, I thought that was the objective here. You know, we lived a lot of years in debt when we were younger. And I remembered I borrowed $1,500 to get through college when I worked my way through college. Joyce and I worked a lot in the last year there. And it took me 10 years to pay it off in those days. $1,500 was a lot of money on top of your normal living expenses when you leave school. So the thing I want to say to you, and you all know this from your own family, debt is expensive. You know what credit card debt is now. It's very expensive. And I avoid paying any credit card interest whatsoever at any time because it's not worth it. I put off purchasing things if I have to. But what I want to point out, besides the bond package, besides our normal budgets, we still have a lot of debt to consider in the future. And that debt is buildings. We have other buildings besides the ones that are in the bond package that are going to need attention over time. We also have all the buildings on Main Street that I pointed out in my green paper. If we could help with that to get people there and to get them to fix it up and all that, and that's a whole big issue for a whole show in the future here. But buildings are going to need attention. School non-capital, the teachers, and getting all the things we need that besides fixing up the buildings and everything, getting you know, all the things we want to do with the schools in this town. Police and fire non-capital, things that they're going to need along the way. Highland Lake and things it'll need over the years. I wrote about that in the green paper. There's a whole list of things over the many years that they're going to want to do one way or the other at Highland Lake, some of which they want to do already. Foster future development. We're going to have to spend money to get the revenue up and get future development in. That costs money. I want to point that out a little later, a bit more about that. Roads. So eventually we're going to have to do more roads. We're going to have another fixing up the roads. Matching funds. One of the problems I notice in the town is that we don't always have the money for the matching funds for getting loans from, or getting money from the state, you know, the free money from the state, which isn't free, but, you know, we sometimes think it is. And then, you know, we need to monitor all these development events and all the stuff that's coming into town. We need help with that, etc. This is not an exhaustive list. Some of these things maybe shouldn't even be here. but they're there, and anybody can question them and add to them or subtract from them. I'm just trying to get a point across. There's going to be a lot more debt coming up in the next X years, and we're going to have to handle it. And I haven't even mentioned an emergency. If we have any emergencies, like the state stops giving us some $1 million or something, we might need it. So what I've done here is I put a little target together. It's not the best slide in the world. I drew it by hand. This is a target. And this little black piece in the center, that's what I call the critical stuff that needs to be done. So this is like a criticality target. These are the most important things that need to be done right now in the schools, whatever they are, okay? Fix the bathrooms, do this, do that. Same in the fire department, same in the police department. And we should be targeting those, and we should be looking at them very hard and say, what is the minimal bond we can put together to do that? Now, if we approve this existing bond the way it is, I'm happy with that. I'm not, you know, we'll live, we'll pay our taxes, as I said before, but I want to suggest that if I were running a business, this is the first thing I would look for, is what are these absolute most critical things, and try to keep that debt down as much as we can while we try to grow the revenue so that we don't need as much debt in the future. Then this is the second layer of criticality. You have to define what that is, and that's for the next set of bonds or for some of the money coming into town, et cetera, et cetera. I'll tell you, get out of here where these are the last things you want to do, and they can wait a few years. Now, the bond package does go over 7 years, so I don't want to think everything's going to be done at once. And might even, from what I read in the newspapers, it might have been stretched out even more than that, because some of the schoolwork won't even start now until the 4th year. But until we get the facts, we won't know. But I wanted to get this target out here because we're going to be talking a lot about that as we go through the rest of this program. Not the target itself, but the principle. All right, last time we said, or that the average growth, I think it was, I can't even remember which time we said it, but the average growth right now is 16,026,447 every year. But again, that's a lot lower than that during the non-reval years, and then higher in the reval year, and it averages out to 3.52%. So that number, now I'm going to show you what I consider to be the lower objectives for dealing with that number. These are objectives. The CEO of the town and the selectmen should set some objectives for bringing that. Well, they don't need any really objectives here. These are objectives if you don't do anything. Okay, so I put 3.52% in each year, just to show you that we're going to keep up with inflation for that. Unless we do something different than we're doing now, and we do what we did over the average over the last 10 years, we're just going to stay with inflation. And we'll have, if we get the money in to keep up with inflation, which I think we will right away, because we are having a reval this year, so that'll bring in some money. But if you figure on the average, we're going to kind of be breaking even. And we have to have the discipline here to keep the budget down when we first get the reval done, so that we don't get up too high with it and have to sustain a higher budget. So now I'm just pointing out the revenue here, but when I do show you the spreadsheet next week, it's going to have the budget sticking at that as well, because, you know, unless you raise taxes, cut the budget, or raise taxes, cut the budget, or whatever, you're not going to be able to, or get more revenue in, you're not going to be able to do anything but this here. So that's that set of objectives. It's the normal average growth. The present rates will cover only inflation, nothing else. There'll be no savings. There'll be no money for emergencies or major improvements. And when the bond passes, taxes will be included in the budget year to pay the interest and principal on the bond. So that'll affect us differently. But that'll raise the mill rate and cause a different set of problems. I'm sorry, not rate. It'll raise the mill rate, but the mill rate will be a little different because of the reval. So that's what's happening there. So we've got the average, and we show you how that's going to come down. Now, the next thing I want to show you is that the second thing we can do, and the first thing we can do really to raise the revenue, is to try to get to a goal of 6%, and try to get that revenue up over the years till it doesn't average 3.52% anymore, but it averages 6%. And that will cover inflation plus some money to either spend or some money to spend. I mean, spend or save, right? So the first year, 2007, 2008, 3.52%. I believe that's the same because I don't think we've got anything coming in here that's above the 16 million. We've got to bring in money to get to the 16 million, our average. And so I left 3.52 for next year. The following year, move it up. I also left it at 3.52. This year it's 5.2. Next year it's 3.52. Then I moved it up to 4%. That's just an objective. We may not make it. We may get more. We may get less. But that's the objective that a whole town will have to work for and figure out what are all the things that need to be done to be able to achieve that. The next is 4.50%. The next one is a year later for 5%. And then for 5.50 and 6%. I have a spreadsheet for that. I'll go over a little more detail next week because that includes mill rates. It includes budgets. It includes all kinds of interesting things, and you can get a pretty good picture of how the town will run if we go in that direction. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it now, but I wanted to get the point across that this is what we need to do. A similar thing to this, in addition probably to cutting some budgets, in addition to raising some taxes a bit, there has to be a balanced plan put together by the CEO and the Board of Selectmen, and it has to be right out in the open where we can all see it and we know what's happening. And when you do it that way, it'll be easier for others to accept it as well, and to get their feedback in. That's called the management by exception. All right, now I have another slide up here which is going to show that to obtain a quantum leap in revenue, the growth, we eventually we need a quantum leap. That's what I told you about, okay? And the quantum leap is where we try to get the 6%. Still want to get the 6% by going up that 4 or 5 year ladder I put there, from 3.5% to 6%. But we want to overlap it with the money from the possible quantum leap. And I want to explain that in a minute. But before I get to the quantum leap, I want to put up this slide which says we have to resolve a key issue in the town. And I think they're working on it. I'm not sure they're working on it in a balanced way, i.e. all the selectmen together as businessmen. I don't think that's happening. And I think there's tension in the town about this. But we need to resolve this key issue of how we're going to grow. And how much open space are we going to preserve? How many factories are we going to let into town? How many developments are we going to let into town? What types of developments are going to? That all has to be agreed as part of the plan. Otherwise, the objectives won't work. So I want to point out here that there is a thing. I hope we can get this slide on. Okay, I drew this up just with a black pen. There's a thing called the normal distribution curve. Most of you probably know what a normal distribution curve is. And basically, take any issue, I don't care what issue it is, mostly when you have a lot of people, their views fall along this curve. So if you say, who wants to keep the town green? Everybody will give you an answer that probably falls along this curve. Who wants to grow the town like heck? You'll probably get an answer that falls along this curve. And what you get is you get the extremes over here that say, we want it to all be green and be, keep it just like it is, exactly the way it is and forever. But we still want all the good schools and the good buildings and all that kind of thing. That's a little hard to achieve, but it's possible. Next is to come over and say, here's the other extreme, which says, we're not worried about any of that. We want to have, we don't know, no green, zero green. I don't think there's anybody like that, but I'm just trying to make a point here. So please don't say on all your other shows that Brian says nobody wants to save the green. Actually, most people fall along the normal distribution curve. They're all mostly in the middle. So if you pick almost all these issues, especially my own viewpoint, it's in the middle here. I think we need to keep as much open space and green as we can, and we just need to balance it with enough development and factories and things to keep the people living to the standard that they want to live to. If they don't want to live to a certain standard, they can always lower the standard. That's your prerogative as a town. But the standard we want to live to now, we need to do something different. So we're going to talk a lot in the weeks about the normal distribution curve. So we need to resolve that problem as a board of directors and a CEO and as a town, and we need to know where we want to go before we can really do anything. But while that's happening, there is a golden goose, so to speak, coming into town. It's already been approved by the land use boards, and I mentioned last week, and that's the development of Upper Aurora Rosa and Winchester Estates. Now, again, that's happening. That's moving along. Winchester Estates still needs one or two more permits, but they have the inland wetland approval. They now have to go for the back again to planning and zoning where they were denied. They don't seem to think they need to go to the state again, the Army Corps and DEP on that one for various reasons that I'm not quite up to date with. But Tony Solano will be on a later program tonight. Maybe you want to watch that and listen to him, and he'll talk about all these issues on the Jay Budahezi program. But what I want to point out is that should we consider the quantum leap, I want to point out that it is very expensive to go out and try to get a quantum leap, because you've got to organize to go find people that want to come to town that can provide a lot to the tax base. So we got to be careful about looking a gift horse in the mouth. When somebody wants to get into town and they're kind of knocking our door down, and they're very cooperative, and they're not perfect by any means, but they do want, then we should probably be as reasonable as we can about trying to get them in a very safe and sane manner. All right. So I'm just saying that you have to weigh these things off, because when I was in business, I did a lot of troubleshooting around the world, and when I was working for Univac, I was very young at the time, they said, Brian, we don't want to lose one customer, not one bank, not one airline, no customers. Why don't you want to lose the customers? Well, because if we lose the customer, then the bank, all our competition will go out around the world and say, they are no good in banking. They just lost the biggest bank in New York, or the biggest bank in Australia, or the biggest bank in Hong Kong. And that would make the sales efforts very difficult for the whole company, and they just didn't want that problem. So they said to me, whatever it takes, you go out and you save these customers. And if I had to move priorities in the factory to get equipment there, if I had to bring more people, experts in, whatever I had to do to put a plan together for success. Luckily, while I was there, we did lose one or two customers, because sometimes they're so far gone you can't save them. But what I want to say to you is that when we want to grow our revenue, we've got to treat our existing customer clients here, the stores in town, the businesses in town, we got to treat them with customer satisfaction. I was Mr. Customer Satisfaction for two companies. One for ICL, the 5th largest computer company in the world, for 7 years, and for Univac for a couple of years there. I was with Univac for a long time, but I only held that position for a couple of years. So I really know what customer satisfaction means, and I can talk forever about it, but I don't have the time tonight. Maybe in a future program, when we talk about techniques, we can talk about customer satisfaction. So whenever I see an opportunity, I think about that, and I try, well, how can we make it so everybody's happy? The people in the town, the developers, and everybody wins. How can we get into that kind of a situation? Now, the quantum leap is trying to move our base up. And I've done a spreadsheet for that, which I'll go over next week. Not the whole spreadsheet, because it's very complex, but I will go over a majority of it. And what I say here on the quantum leap is, first we keep trying to get in the 5 to 6% growth, and then, and by the way, it overlaps in about, in 2014, that's when on the other chart I show us getting up to around 5.5%. Well, that's when this, if this development goes ahead, that's about when it'll start to produce some money. And I added 3% in each year for 8 years for the development money, and that's roughly the way, if all things go according to plan, if all things happen, that's kind of the way it might go. It might be less, it might be more. I have to re-emphasize that, because these things, when you deal with these objectives, you have to deal with the best information you have available, and then you have to watch, banjo by exception, you got to watch for it to change. And when it changes, you got to take action, and you got to face the fact. When people call me and tell me I made a mistake on a program, I fix it right away. And I try to fix it and say, sorry, I made a mistake. Now here's the real fact. So what I've done here is I started to build it up, and it's going to take 8 years after we wait 4 years for the money to come in, 3 or 4 years. Okay, so we got a long period of time here, but we actually get up to a cumulative of 9%. We start about 8.5%, and then when we add the 6 and the 3, we get up to 6% here, then we got 9%. So what you're going to see on the spreadsheet next week is money to spend and money to save. and that we can then begin, as we come up, we'll be able to be in the driver's seat a little more than we are now. And that's very important to understand. So it's an evolution. The quantum leap is an evolutionary approach to the quantum leap. And quantum leap, unless somebody says, okay, we're going to move a whole factory into town with 1,000 employees over the next year, then we'd get it quicker. But that's not likely to happen. It's likely now, and if the development doesn't happen, we have to find another quantum leap. And if we don't find another quantum leap, then we'll have to live with the results of growing it up. And staying at 6% or even getting the 6% may not be possible or practical. That's something we have to look at as well. I just use that today for an example. The CEO and the selectmen have to get together as businessmen and come up with what they think is realistic and what they think they can achieve, and then adjust the whole plan accordingly. Now, the quantum leap is, if you look at your own personal family, your quantum leap is equivalent to a huge promotion in your job, usually brought upon by things you do, you know, to improve your skills, or maybe even a little luck sometimes. Or it's equivalent to a new job that dramatically affects your quality of life. And we've had those in the past, and they do help, and that's how people get from earning a nickel an hour to earning $2 an hour. You know, they improve their skills, and they take advantage of opportunity and whatever else, and they work hard. So that's kind of what we have to do as a business. Now, getting up to that, I say here, it's going to take about 14 years or so to get to the end of that. By then, a lot of other things will be going on in town, and maybe we'll have some other people coming in, and maybe we won't. So that's something we can manage from year to year and keep everybody aware of and appraised of. And then we can save the money or we can spend it. And I do show in the spreadsheets that if we save it and we invest it at 6%, you know, we get quite a bit of money over time. And it takes a long time. It's hard to earn, just like in your own family. But there is no other option. Either you do it or you live with what you got. That's it. Okay, I want to now put up a problem solving, because we're going to move into what I consider the organizational aspect for the next 22 or 3 minutes. And that is the problem solving. I drew up a little quick thing. When you go into problem solving, which I've done again in all kinds of environments and all over the world, in socialistic, communistic areas everywhere, people are the common denominator are the same everywhere. And when you deal with these kind of things, you have to take the same approaches. It's a little harder in some areas than others. Isn't easy here in Winston. But basically, if you take a triangle, I use this in courses I give around the world, and I don't do it anymore, but I used to a lot, to my own employees mainly, or people that work for me. And that if you had a triangle, when you do a problem, when you do a system, or when you manage a company, you're always trying to go down this slope on the triangle. You have stages along the way here. You know, find the development, work with the development, get the development in, you define it all, and you should be able to go down a slope. If you don't stop and define properly in the beginning, this is the definition period here, it gets a little less as you go along, and you manage by objectives along the way here on this triangle, so that if you pop up with a problem in here, then you all get around the table and come up with a resolution and adjust the plan. Now, but if you don't do that, then you get this kind of a triangle. It's backwards. And what happens is you do less definition up front, and then you find out more problems as you go along. And you never get to the end because you're going this way towards infinity rather than this way towards the end and success of the project. And if you're a businessman, and I'm trying to make a strong point here about businessmen, they want to make a profit. They want to make, at least break even, certainly make a profit. And I've talked to barbers about this, and they follow the same approach. You know, they have years, lean years, and they have good years. And that goes for almost anybody in business. They have to really consider this and make sure they know. Now, a great percentages, as you probably know, businesses go broke. You know, they don't make it. So you have to be very careful with businesses. Now, the next thing I want to point out is that in order to make it, to take this kind of approach, you got to avoid redundancy. And by avoiding redundancy is what I mean. When you get in here and you don't define properly, you start circling around. You go up here and then you got to go back. And you go up here and you got to go back. And you go up here and you got to go back. And, you know, then they call in somebody like me to turn the triangle around, stop everything, define it, make it go down, right? That could take years to do that in some places. So I drew a little sort of whatever you call it here, to show you that. You can go around in circles here pretty easy. So I really want to point this out because it's going to set the scene for the next couple of tough love slides that I have here to put up. I'm going to say this. Some people won't like to hear it, but if you're going to run like a business, you have to face this in the beginning of the triangle and go down the slope, not at the end. So my basic point here, I always think I have more points to make than I have time, and I always seem to get them in, so I'm happy with myself here. But anyway, now we're going to talk a bit about organizing for success, so we can have the triangle face in the right direction and not have all the redundancy and go, okay. Now, in order to run a business, it's my personal view that you need businessmen to run the town, and that you should elect as many businessmen as you can, and I mean experienced businessmen. I mean people that have worked for years and had a successful business. Having somebody who had failed businesses isn't as good as having somebody who's had successful businesses. And I'm not saying we've got anybody who has failed business, but I'm saying you got to look and you got to say, we want successful businessmen to run our business and help us grow the business and attract all this stuff. Now, I want to say that personally, if I have a heart attack and a heart problem, I'm going to go try, or somebody in my family, I'm going to try to find the best heart surgeon in the world, the best one. If I have a problem where my plumbing is not working, I'm going to try to find the best, most reliable plumber I can find. Sometimes I try to do it myself, and then, you know, I get in trouble. But if we have a serious problem, then we try to get the right person for the job. We have a business problem in town. I'm positive of that. I showed you the numbers. Everybody kind of agrees with me. We need to elect businessmen as selectmen. And we need to get them in there fast. And when they get in there, they need to set up the objectives, and they need to start running the town as a business. They got to establish and publish, so everybody knows what they are, high-level business priorities, 5 or 6 of them, whatever. And it doesn't matter what party they're from, as long as they're good businessmen and they were successful and they really understand how to run a business and they want to spend the time doing it. Most people don't. They're so busy running their businesses, they haven't got time to run the town. That's one of the problems. That one of the reasons I'm pitching in is because I'm retired and I have the time to do a lot of this research that other people don't have time to do. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy to do this. Establish and publish the high-level business priorities. That's got to happen, and they got to be put out there for everybody to see, hung on the wall in the boardroom, and everybody's got to know what they are. And then they've got to provide consistent policy and direction to all the other managers in the town so that they can work within these and come up with the low-level objectives so they can put a plan together that everybody is confident they can achieve. It doesn't do any good to put a plan together everybody says will fail and can't be done, then that won't work. So it has to be planned and managed. We need to provide consistent policy and direction. There's no doubt about that. We've got to be united as a team. When you're in a business, you're running a business, the last thing anybody wants to see, especially the shareholders, is fighting and arguing in the boardroom. You know, of course, you can't see it in most companies because they're not televised, but I'm not so sure the TV is good for our town, but I love the station and I'm glad they have it, but everybody can see warts and all of every little argument that we have. But basically, there has to be consistent policy and direction, and when people get together, and I've seen Gödel and Einstein. Gödel was one of the best mathematicians we ever produced in Princeton, and he came from Germany, actually, from escapee from the war. And Einstein, of course, one of the best physicists. They had opposite sides on the issues in their life. Opposite sides. But they were at the Institute, the advanced study in Princeton for many years together, and they talked and they disagreed with each other about very complex issues. Then they walked home at night and had dinner together or went out for a drink. And if you saw them walking, they looked a little eccentric, but you know, we have to put up with that when we run a business. We have to work together, and then we have to be able to get along with each other when we don't agree. That's very important, because we won't agree on most things. We have to delegate the authority, empower the people to get on with their job. If they don't have the confidence and they're not empowered to get on with their job, they're not going to be able to do a good job. It's impossible. And then we have to produce results. We have to be able to say every quarter, where do we stand against these objectives? Where do we stand at the end of the year? Did we get our 4% increase in revenue this year or not? Did we get our 5% or 5.5%? Is the quantum leap going along according to plan? Is there anything we do to speed it up? Do it safely, make sure that it's done properly and goes through all the land use boards and everything. And when it happens and all the approvals are there and the guy starts digging the foundations, we all get together and help them be a success. We all work together and help our new share owners and our new stockholders be a success in the community, because what's a success for them is a success for us. What's a success for us is a success for them. It's very synergistic. So I'm saying we need to do this, okay? You don't have to do it. That's you go to the polls. I'm not telling you which party to vote for. I don't think anything. But I think that you need people who have this experience, and I'm going to give you some reasons why now you need that. You need this because they have the proven skills. They run a business successfully. It might be a smaller business than we have here, but it's the same principles are involved. You have to set objectives each year for a profit and loss statement. You have to get people to work for you. They got to be the right people. You don't want to hire a bookkeeper to do a professional plumber's job, and you don't want to hire the professional plumber who's excellent at plumbing but doesn't know much about books to do the bookkeeping job. So what you got to do is you got to get people that have the proven skills. You might not like some of the people, you might not like their business, but I've had, again, and wherever you go, and you get people that are trying to get to the moon, or they're trying to get a big banking system up, or they're trying to get a company turned around, or they're trying to grow a company fast around the world to compete with their competitors. There are going to be a lot of people in there that you can't get along with, and but they have skills that are absolutely essential for your growth and for your profitability and for your existence. And that's especially true. Now, I will tell you, and you know from your own experience here, that I like working in those kind of environments because everybody pulls together. When the flood comes, people pull together. I was in the Hartford Circus fire when I was about 5 or 6. I can never remember the age. People pulled together there to help save lives, and that's what happens in those kind of times. So what we have to do is try to get it to happen when we don't have a disaster. Try to get it to happen as a normal course of events. And if you see people that can't work as a team, then you shouldn't vote for them. I don't care which party they're in. You got to get people that can work together and that can get on with a plan. The businessmen all speak the same common language. They all speak business. They all know what a profit and loss is. They all know what objectives are. They all know how to meet objectives. They all know management by exception. They do it every day. I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, Brian, we can give you a bid for putting on your extension, but we can't. If we hit a ledge, that's more, we can't tell you how much that's going to cost and how long it's going to take. Or if we hit a spring underground, we can't tell you how much that's going to cost. But we're going to put this plan together, and this is what it'll cost, and this is how long it'll take. But if we hit one of those management by exception things, then we'll have to sit down at the table with you and talk about it. I personally understand that because I'm a businessman. But what I want to say to you is that businessmen speak that language. They understand all that. It doesn't matter whether they're a barber, it doesn't matter whether they're a plumber, it doesn't matter whether they're a carpenter. If they have their own business, they have to deal with exactly these same issues. I remember I was once, as a kid, worked in a Tony's Drive-In in Torrington. Tony, one of my mentors, and Tony Bishakowski, who did a lot for this area. He's Route 8, Mr. Route 8, and he's also Mr. Lottery to a certain extent. He's did a lot of good, and I learned a heck of a lot from him. But I used to have to deal with people I hated when they came in to the restaurant. I had no choice. I was working there, I was cooking, and I was waiter. And if I didn't like the people, I still had to be good to them, customer satisfaction. And if I wasn't good to them and I wasn't customer satisfaction, then I would have lost my job, certainly, because he relied on those customers to keep his business open and to be able to pay us. Right. These businessmen are also used to promoting positive teamwork towards common objectives. They have to take all these different people and make them work together towards a common objective, or they wouldn't succeed in business. So they're used to doing that. Right? And they're not going to create dissension. No, I'm not saying somebody won't make a mistake, won't get high-headed once in a while, but if that happens, which it does happen sometimes, then out you go for a drink after, or for a Coke or whatever, and you try to get along with the person on all the other 100 issues that you do agree with them on. So it's very important. The next point is they're used to a discipline required. There's a lot of discipline required. When you put these objectives down and you say you're going to try to go for these numbers over the next 10 years, a lot of discipline is necessary. Discipline in, hey, we can't have certain types of budgets. Hey, we got to have certain types of growth. And a lot of discipline is required in getting everybody there. Now, I always like to use, and I'll quite often do, use the example of an orchestra leader. You know, he comes in, especially a symphonic orchestra. He comes in, he's got these hundreds of people in the orchestra. They all play different instruments. They're all artists. A lot of them are temperamental. A lot of them think they're better than everybody else. Some are not confident at all. And he's got to take, by the time he performs in Carnegie Hall, he's got to whip them into shape. And he's got to get them all playing together. They got to be, they can't be dissonant, you know. They've got to be working. And then in the end, who gets all the credit for it? The orchestra. The orchestra gets the credit. And the reason the orchestra gets credit is because the conductor wants the orchestra to get the credit. And that's how it has to happen in the town. The town workers there, the people that run all these organizations, they have to get the credit in the end. And the selectmen and the CEO have to kind of take a back seat on that. So it's give them credit, give credit, and that promotes people, and we'll talk more about it in future weeks. All right, the next is they will air their views in a positive, professional manner. And there'll be mistakes made. Some people won't like some of the way they handle it. They're all not perfect. Businessmen aren't perfect. They make a lot of mistakes too. But on an average, they make less. Now, would I want one of these businessmen in the school system teaching mathematics to the kids? I don't know. I'd have to check and see what their background is and what their skills are and whether or not they have all the skills necessary to get into school and teach. It isn't just the mathematics they have to know. They have to know how to deal with the children. They have to know the sociology, the psychology, and how much learning somebody can do. Like even on these shows, I'm trying to permit as much each week as I think people can digest, and even then I feel it's probably too much. So they're used to that. They will certainly air their views, and in order to get people to air their views, you have to have an open. People often say to me, why don't anybody go down and air their views? And I say, well, because when they go down, they get the door shut in their face, or somebody, you know, they look at with a blank stare. But what has to happen is they have to be responsive to all this and encourage people to come, because that's managed by exception. If people won't come with their views until you made a mistake, then that's negative. It's not positive. You want people to come and tell you what you need to do to improve. So the next is they'll get to the point. You know, remember in the first, for those of you who've been around for 4 shows, and if you haven't, I got them on tape. You can see one. I talked about bicycle shedding. C. Northcote Parkinson wrote a book about, one of the chapters was bicycle shedding, where you talk about for 8 hours about some subject about the bicycle shed. Well, businessmen can't afford to spend 8 hours. They can't spend 8 hours to talk to me now, even in the city hall, town hall, or the businessmen that are running for office. They got seconds and minutes to talk to me. So I got to speak to them. I got to speak to them in shorthand, real fast. And I can do that with them because they understand, I understand the language. It's like speaking French to Frenchman or German to German. Now, when I talk to people who don't understand the language, then I'm batting my head against a brick wall because we don't speak the same language, and I'm never going to be able. They don't have the same experience, they don't have the same background. I don't have their experience or their background, and they're probably on the other end of the normal distribution curve, and I'm on the other side. That's where these problems come in. So you want to get people who can work that way together and get to the point. And they will listen and seek advice. That's very important. Listening and seeking advice. Because again, management by exception absolutely relies on that. When you set objectives, you don't have all the information. So you better be on the lookout for it, and you better set the objectives and work. So that's that. Now I just want to put up quickly, because we're done now for this week. If anybody wants to talk more detail about any of these, I'll be happy to talk to you about them outside of this meeting. You can send me a letter. You can send me an email. I would hope he puts up my stuff on the screen again. Thank you. And I do have some papers I wrote, and I will write more papers. But letter to the selectmen, that green paper I told you, I made a condensed version so you don't have to read the whole thing unless you want to go to City Hall and get it. Winchester problem and proposed solution, which we talked about in the earlier shows. That's in red. This one's green. Possible 2008, 2009 property tax implications, yellow. example Winchester growth objective spreadsheets that I'm going to go over next week. I still have a little touching up to do on there. They're going to be in blue, and you can get a copy of those, and there's a lot of information in here as far as the objectives are concerned. Everybody will tell you all the reasons they can't be done, but that's what you need. You need to listen to those and then fix them. Go solve them. And then the 95% rule I mentioned last week for delegation is that, you got to be able to. You can't run a smooth organization if you don't delegate, and you don't delegate 95% of the time. You got to set up an environment that allows that. We'll talk about that in future programs. So that's it. That's it for tonight. I thank my daughter for running the camera. She did a good job. My wife Joyce is here, just trying to see, how the whole setup works. And I'm signing off for tonight. Next week, I do want to talk more about creating an environment for success. Some things I touched on tonight, but I'll add a lot more to it. Once you do have this organization for success, then you need to create the environment to be able to do things. And we got a lot of things we can talk about that. So I thank you. Now we'll get to the credits tonight. I want to just point out that I do have a very interesting person here as a guest today, and that's my old friend Ben Franklin. I learned from my 8th grade school teacher, Miss Barbara Klug, who was also a business person. She owned a farm with her family, and that penny saved is a penny earned. And I often mention that to people, that if you save a penny and then invest it at 6%, then over many, many years, you're going to have quite a bit of money. And I learned that from Ben Franklin and from Barbara Klug. I don't have her picture. I got it hidden away somewhere in my photo album. If I find it, I'll put it up. But we're thankful to her for that. Thank you very much.
Ready to go? You